All right, guys, so the Chat Sports Comment Challenge, it's back. And the last time we rolled this out on Vikings Now, we had one person comment 41 times on a video. So that's my challenge to you guys. Whoever comments more than 41 times and whoever comments the most, whether it's Skull, whatever you want it to be, we'll give you guys a shout out on the next edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. So who will it be? Comment Skull as many times you want and try to get a shout out on tomorrow's video. Welcome to the Vikings Now. I'm your host for today's show, Patrick Seatman. And coming up, we're going to be diving into the Dalvin Cook injury news. Tom Pelissero had an interesting update about that. Then also we're going to stick with Dalvin Cook and kind of address the trade rumors around Minnesota star running back. And then also Kirk Cousins, the San Francisco 49ers. That trade rumor kind of gets thrown out every single offseason. So we're going to hit it again because we know Kyle Shanahan, he has a man crush on Kirk Cousins, so we're going to be diving into all that and more on today's video. But let's start off. Tom Pelissero broke this news earlier today as he said Vikings running back Dalvin Cook was recently in Minnesota for a post-surgery checkup on his shoulder and is said to be making excellent progress per sources. Cook played in the last 3 seasons while protecting the injured shoulder, which is now 100% stable and stronger. And if you guys remember the past 2 years for Dalvin Cook, he has actually dislocated that same shoulder twice. He actually did it during the Saints game in London this year, and he was actually able to go and play the next week. I feel like the past 3 times he's dislocated it, he's been able to play the next week. But if we take a look at his stats over the last 4 seasons, the production has definitely took a dip for Dalvin Cook. 2020, he was fantastic. He had 5.1 yards per carry. 2021 dropped down to 4.7. And in 2022, this past season was one of his worst years of his career, sitting at 4.4. And the thing is with Dalvin Cook, the yards over expected in terms of rushing like per carry, he was in the negative this year. He was actually in the 30th percentile range for NFL running backs. So the production for Dalvin, it just hasn't been there like in years past. But honestly, I am very shocked that Dalvin Cook has not been traded yet. I thought Dalvin Cook would have been on the trade block by now just because of the certain moves the Vikings have made during this NFL offseason. Obviously, Alexander Mattison re-signed this past year, which was a huge deal for the Vikes. They brought him back on a 2-year, $7 million contract, which I think that kind of put the nail in the coffin on Dalvin Cook coming back to the Minnesota Vikings because we know Kwesi is a very analytical GM. He's not going to be wanting to give $20 million per year to the running back group. That's just not really how he works. So Alexander Mattison re-signing, kind of a huge indication that Dalvin Cook could be traded in the upcoming weeks, and this thing could even roll on to the summer. But I got more to say about this in a second, but I do want to get your guys' thoughts on this on today's pinned comment. Will Dalvin Cook be traded? Type Y for yes or type N for no. This will be the pinned comment on today's video. YouTube ad break comes. Let it play. Go down there and answer today's pinned comment. So some Dalvin Cook trade destinations. I think these are 5 teams that could be looking for a running back. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they just moved off of Leonard Fournette. Could they bring in a guy like Dalvin Cook? I don't know. Not really as likely as other ones, I think. Carolina Panthers, they did bring in Miles Sanders this year, but they were thrown out when originally the Dalvin Cook trade rumors were kind of thrown out this offseason. They seem interested. Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos, they have been very aggressive this offseason, and with the recent Javonte Williams injury news around his torn ACL, he's not supposed to be ready to come back until December. Could they try the trade for a true RB1? I think that's a team to keep your eyes out for. Then also the Baltimore Ravens. They're always looking for more kind of backfield help in Baltimore. They're a team too. And then obviously with Alvin Kamara and the New Orleans Saints, yeah, they brought in Jamal Williams. Could they kind of throw out, or could they potentially trade for a Dalvin Cook? Who knows? But those are 5 teams that I think could personally be looking to trade for Dalvin Cook. But what could his trade value be? I think if a team's desperate enough, he could maybe go for a second. I still think it's going to be around the third. Again, Dalvin Cook's 27 years old. These NFL GMs, they just don't like paying running backs in general. So are you going to take the limited draft capital that you have and go trade for an aging running back who hasn't produced like he has in years past? I just don't think so. And honestly, with the Vikings draft picks, them only having 5 picks in this next year's draft, they got a pick in round 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They got the 23rd overall, 87th overall, 119, 159, and 211. I think the Vikings, this is kind of a no-duh move for them. I think you are going to need to try to go get more draft capital because there's a lot of holes still needed to be filled on this roster. And with bringing Alexander Mattison back, Dalvin Cook, he'll most likely be gone. But hey, with one of those draft picks, you know those players are going to be wearing these sweet draft day hats. And if you go to chatsports.com/Vikings draft, you can get one for yourself. I think these hats, I think the design are way cooler than they have been in years past. And we got a great deal going on. If you just head over to the Fanatics, chatsports.com/Vikings draft, you can go pick up your draft day hat today. Now let's talk about it. Kirk Cousins to San Francisco. We talk about this every single year because Kyle Shanahan, like I said at the top of today's video, he's got a man crush on Kirk Cousins. And Mike Florio, he's also a Vikings fan, he threw this out there. He said there was chatter that the Vikings were trying to move on for Kirk Cousins at the Combine. Very, very interesting. And like I said, Kyle Shanahan has always been a huge fan of Kirk Cousins. And if the Vikings were going to trade Kirk, they would save $10 million if they traded him post-June 1st. They would actually have to eat $35 million in dead cap space if they traded him before June 1st. So I think if this trade were going to have to go down, it would most likely be after June 1st. Kind of similar when we were talking about the Lamar Jackson trade rumors with the Vikings. But then Florio also mentioned that the 49ers were mentioned in that conversation as a team that could move on from Kirk Cousins. So I think that's all very interesting. We all know that Kyle Shanahan, Kirk Cousins relationship is a very strong one. And Kyle Shanahan, they love the accurate quarterbacks. They love the quarterbacks that love to stay healthy. And hey, that's Kirk Cousins. If you look at his stats over the past 4 seasons, Kirk, like we have said, he is a very accurate quarterback. Going back to 2019, 69% completion percentage. 2020, 67. 2021, 66. 2022, 66 again. Kirk Cousins, we know who he is as a QB. He's going to put up these great numbers, these very solid numbers, but we also know when the kind of lights are the brightest, Kirk will not always live up to those expectations that you have. And I think we all still kind of have this question, is Kirk Cousins the quarterback that could get you to the Super Bowl? Because we kind of know he's going to be able to perform in the regular season. I think he answered some of those questions this past season, whether he can perform during prime time. But Kirk, it's just that same question that keeps on coming up. Will he be able to win the big game as a quarterback for a football team? I think we kind of know who he is at this point. I think, he's turning 34 years old in this next upcoming season. He's been a veteran in the league for a very long time. There's not going to be a huge game-breaking type of change of style to his game. He actually did get a little faster this offseason. He was working out with Adam Thielen's trainer, so that was a positive. But let's talk about this trade idea because this has been thrown out there in the past. And it's just a straight-up swap of Trey Lance for Kirk Cousins. Obviously, the money's going to have to work itself out. But I do think that this is something that the Vikings do need to consider because, hey, Trey Lance for Kirk Cousins, chance to get a potential franchise quarterback. Who knows? I'll give you guys some more thoughts on this in a second. But go down, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It's simple. It's just a quick way to help us out here at Chat Sports. And, hey, it also makes me look good for my bosses. The more subs we get on this video, it would just help me out a lot. Hit that sub button. So let's talk about it. Trey Lance to the Vikings, though. Trey Lance, he grew up in the Minnesota area, and he is a big-time Vikings fan. And I still think Trey Lance has a lot of untapped potential. We haven't seen a ton of him play in the NFL so far. Honestly, we haven't seen a ton of him play since dating back to his high school days. But I do still think, and whether it's even just a 10% chance at this happening, I think Trey Lance does have that franchise quarterback potential. I think he's kind of made of the right stuff. It's just going to come down to, can he get better in the NFL and take that next step? As we look at his stats as a starter from this past season, it's not the best. I mean, he's only throwing at a 55% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. One of those games was played in a monsoon in Chicago in week 1. So, again, these stats can be kind of skewed. But, again, 2-2 as a starter. Yards per attempt is only at 7.8. Again, I don't think Trey Lance, I still think he's got a lot of potential left in this league. He just hasn't really lived up to that 3rd overall pick back in the 2019 draft at all. But I'll get into more of this in a second. But would you accept this trade? If it's just a straight-up Kirk Cousins, Trey Lance swap, would you take it? Give me a T for trade or give me a P for pass in the comments section. Personally, I think I would do it. I mean, obviously right now, Kirk Cousins, way better quarterback than Trey Lance. You can't really argue that with anybody. That's just kind of another no-duh statement. Kirk Cousins right now is better than Trey Lance. But I do think Trey Lance has that boomer-bust potential still. And I would be very interested if Vikings were going to take a chance on that. Because, honestly, I don't think Lance has played enough ball in the NFL to determine how good he is right now or how good he can be. I think Trey Lance, he still has a ton of untapped potential left in the tank. And let's just go over some pros and cons about Trey Lance. This dating back to his NFL draft profile. A huge pro. He's got a great work ethic. He was apparently a film junkie at North Dakota State. Some cons, just the experience. Again, he has not played a lot of football. He's not even thrown a lot of passes dating back to his high school days. Another pro, he's great in play action. Again, that Shanahan rushing offense that just sets up a lot of play action for him, and he did that a lot at North Dakota State, and I think he could do that with the Vikings again. Another big con, that accuracy, man. I mean, 55% completion percentage is nothing to write home about. But again, another pro, he's a great dual threat quarterback. He's got those great legs, and I think that can kind of buy him time in the NFL for him to figure out the other cons of his game. But I also do think the Vikings would offer a great support system for a young quarterback coming in. You have that franchise wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. You have that franchise tight end in TJ Hawkinson. Also a franchise left tackle in Christian Darrisaw. Those are just three big pieces where no matter what quarterback you put around him, I think they're good enough to elevate his game. You also have a young offensive genius head coach in Kevin O'Connell, and I think if you allowed Kevin O'Connell with this support system right here to get their hands on Trey Lance, I'd be willing to roll those die. Obviously, it's going to come down if Trey Lance is good enough to be a franchise quarterback, but I think the Vikings could offer a very solid support system. And again, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you guys made it all the way to the end, just give me a real one in the comments section down below. It's the best part of my night when I'm going back through and looking at the comments and seeing where all the real ones are at. And then also you can follow me on Twitter at @PatSeatmanNFL. I'm constantly tweeting about the Vikings and whatever it may be. The Vikings only got 5 draft picks heading into the NFL draft so far, so it's going to be very curious to see what they do there. But the Kirk Cousins trade rumors, they're always going to come back to circle with Kyle Shanahan. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Let's go Vikes.